The floor under my boots trembled, and I knew the field was about to double again. My legs were shaking, my lungs were burning, and every eye in that massive steel hall was on me, waiting for me to fall. My name is Ethan Cole, and 6 weeks ago I became the first human ever accepted into the Coalition Officer Academy. 40 cadets from 19 worlds trained beside me. None of them wanted me there, and their chief instructor, a Tholan named Vrelk, wanted me gone more than anyone. "Cadet Cole," Vrelk said that morning, his 4 eyes turning toward me with a look I had learned to recognize as scorn. "Your homeworld sits at 0.83 standard gravity, weak, soft, a nursery world." His mandibles clicked together, which was how his species laughed. "It's no wonder your kind arrived to the stars 1,000 cycles late. You evolved on a planet that barely tries to kill you." The room rippled with laughter. The Krasari cadets, who came from a world at twice standard gravity, laughed the loudest. They always did. I said nothing. I had learned that much in 6 weeks. "Today's evaluation is the Gravity Endurance Circuit," Vrelk announced, his voice booming across the hall. "Full combat pack, standard obstacle course, and a gravity field that rises every 90 seconds. Most species reach 1.4 times their homeworld baseline before their bodies give out. Let us see how our fragile guest performs." A tall Lorenian cadet beside me leaned over and whispered, "Good luck, Ethan. You will need it." Her name was Grace Turner, one of the few cadets who had ever spoken to me like a person instead of a mistake. She came from a colony world with gravity close to Earth's own, so she understood, even if only a little, what I was about to walk into. "Thanks, Grace," I whispered back. "I'll try not to embarrass the whole planet." She almost smiled. Almost. The circuit was simple to describe and brutal to survive. Run, climb, carry a weighted crate across a beam, lift a bar over your head. Repeat the whole sequence again, while the gravity field in the hall silently climbed higher every 90 seconds. Cadets would drop out one by one as their legs buckled, as their hearts could no longer keep pace, as the weight of their own bodies became an enemy no training could defeat. I stepped onto the starting mat. A crew member locked a 40-kilogram pack onto my shoulders, the same weight given to every cadet no matter their homeworld gravity. It already felt unfair before the test even started, but I kept that thought to myself and rolled my shoulders instead. The field activated at 1 standard gravity, the same baseline most species in the room considered normal. For me, raised at 0.83, that was already 20% heavier than anything my body had ever carried for long. I felt it instantly in my knees during the first sprint, a strange and familiar ache that reminded me of something from home, an old memory of running stadium stairs in a weighted vest during officer training, back when my instructors made us train heavier than our own gravity, simply because Earth was too gentle to build what they wanted built into us. The gravity ticked up to 1.2. The Krasari cadets barely reacted. I shortened my stride, dropped my center of balance low, the way an old training officer back on Earth once taught me on a mountain trail in Colorado. Small steps, steady breath, keep moving. At 1.4, 2 Lorenian cadets folded to the floor, their long limbs built for a lighter world unable to hold their own crates any longer. Vrelk did not even glance toward them. His eyes stayed locked on me, waiting for the moment I would fail too. At 1.6, my legs were screaming with every step. The 40-kilogram pack now felt closer to 80. Sweat ran into my eyes, and my heartbeat pounded so loud I could hear it over the hum of the gravity generators. But I kept moving, because I remembered something Vrelk had never bothered to learn in all his cycles of experience judging soft worlds and hard worlds. Gravity is not the only force that shapes a body. Earth is gentle, yes, 0.83 standard, lighter than almost every world represented in that hall. But Earth is cruel in every other way a planet can be cruel. Deserts that bake the ground until it cracks. Winters that freeze rivers solid. Mountains so tall the air itself starves your blood of oxygen. My people have spent 100,000 years surviving things that have nothing to do with gravity at all, and everything to do with stubbornness. Our ancestors chased prey animals across open plains for entire days, not because we were the fastest, but because we simply refused to stop. At 1.8, a Tholan cadet finally collapsed, and for the briefest second, Vrelk's confident expression flickered. At 2.0, my vision started to narrow at the edges. Every single step became a negotiation with my own skeleton. I thought about my grandfather who used to walk for hours through thin mountain air simply because that was an ordinary Tuesday for him. I thought about every runner who had ever crossed a finish line on a fractured bone because their mind refused to accept the word impossible. I put one foot in front of the other, and I kept going. At 2.2, the last Krasari cadet finally dropped to her knees, gasping, Her pride shattered on the mat in front of her. That gravity level matched her own homeworld exactly, and even she could not carry more. At 2.4, I was no longer running. I was crawling across the final obstacle, dragging the pack behind me, because my arms had stopped listening to my brain about what was still possible. My mouth tasted like copper. Every cell in my body felt like it was burning from the inside. Somewhere behind me, I heard Grace shout my name, her voice cutting through the roar of blood in my ears. At 2.6, I reached the finish line and collapsed onto the mat, chest heaving, arms shaking uncontrollably. The generators shut down, and the field released, and standard gravity, still heavier than my own home, suddenly felt like floating on air. The hall fell completely silent. 40 cadets from 19 worlds stared at the human curled on the floor, the one they had laughed at that morning, who had just outlasted every single one of them at nearly 3 times his homeworld's gravity. Vrelk approached slowly. His 4 eyes were doing something I had never seen them do before, a kind of quiet recalculation, as if a fact he had trusted his entire career had just cracked open in front of him. "That should not have been possible," he said, his voice quieter now than I had ever heard it. "Your species' gravity tolerance curve does not predict this result." I pulled myself up onto shaking legs, still gasping for air, but grinning through the exhaustion because some victories are worth every bit of pain they cost. "It's not about gravity, sir," I managed to say. "You studied our planet. You never studied our people." Vrelk said nothing. For the first time since I had arrived at the academy, he had no answer ready. Grace jogged over and steadied my arm before my legs could give out completely. "I told everyone you were tougher than you looked," she said, smiling now without holding back. Nobody believed me. I barely believed me, I admitted, my voice hoarse. Around us, the other cadets began to whisper among themselves, glancing at me with something new in their expressions, something that had not been there that morning. It was not friendship yet, and it was not full respect either, but it was the beginning of both. Vrelk turned to address the class, his voice regaining its usual command, though something in his tone had shifted. "Dismissed," he said simply. Then, just before turning away, he looked back at me one more time. "Cadet Cole, report to my office after evening meal. I would like to understand how a soft world builds a will like that." "Yes, sir," I said. As the hall emptied around us, Grace walked beside me toward the exit, matching my slow and unsteady pace. "You know," she said, "back home, we have a saying. A gentle sky can still raise a strong heart." I laughed, though it came out as more of a wheeze. "We have something like that too. We just say it takes a lot more words." She laughed with me, and for the first time since arriving at that academy, the sound did not feel like it was aimed against me. It felt like it belonged with me. That night, as I sat alone in my quarters with ice wrapped around both knees, I thought about Vrelk's question. How does a soft world build a will like that? I did not have a simple answer, not one that would fit neatly into a report. It was not the gravity. It was not the training. It was every person who ever refused to quit before me, passing that same stubborn spirit down through generations until it reached someone standing in a steel hall on a strange world, proving a scornful instructor wrong one exhausted step at a time. Tomorrow there would be new tests, new instructors doubting what a gentle world could produce, and new chances to prove them wrong all over again. But tonight, for the first time since I had left Earth, I let myself simply feel proud, and I closed my eyes knowing that somewhere far above this academy, humanity's example was no longer being questioned. It was being watched, and it was being remembered.